So delusional. Imagine thinking I'd marry him. She laughed after I proposed in front of her friends. I said, "You're right," and left the restaurant. Packed all my things while she was still out with them. She came home to an empty apartment and a text. Imagine thinking I'd stay. A week later, she appeared at my doorstep crying. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The ring box felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my pocket. My heart wasn't just beating. It was a frantic, hopeful drum solo against my ribs. I'd planned this for months. Save for the ring she'd subtly pointed out in a boutique window. Chosen this restaurant, the Celadon, because it's where we had our first real date. I'd even coordinated with the waiter to bring a bottle of her favorite champagne at the right moment. The right moment was now. Across the table, Qley was holding court, her laughter like sharp, bright bells as she finished a story about humiliating an intern at her marketing firm. Her two best friends, Jenna and Priya, mirrored her every expression, a perfectly synchronized audience of two. I took a slow breath. This was it. The noise of the restaurant faded to a murmur. "Qley," I said, my voice thankfully steady. She paused, mid-sip of her cosmopolitan, and arched a perfectly shaped eyebrow at me. "What's up, babe? You look constipated." Jenna snickered. I stood up, my chair scraping softly on the tile. I walked around to her side of the table. The three women looked up at me, curious smiles playing on Jenna and Priya's lips. Qley's was more of a bemused smirk. I lowered myself to one knee, the cold floor a shock through my dress pants. I fumbled the ring box out of my pocket, my fingers suddenly clumsy. Click. The hinge opened. The single, excellent diamond caught the soft overhead light. I saw my own hopeful, terrified reflection in its facets. "Qley Marie Evans," I began, the rehearsed words flooding back. "For 3 years, you've been the most vibrant, exciting part of my life. You make every day unpredictable, and oh my God." It wasn't a gasp of joy. It was a statement of pure, unadulterated shock. Her bemused smirk froze, then twitched. A hand flew to her mouth, but it wasn't to stifle a cry. It was to hide the laugh that was already bubbling in her throat. Her eyes darted from the ring to Jenna, then to Priya. A single, loud, hollow laugh escaped her. "You're serious?" she asked, her voice rising enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. The drum solo in my chest stuttered into a sick, arrhythmic thud. "Of course I'm serious. I love you. I want to spend my life with you." She lowered her hand, the full, cruel smile now on display. She leaned back in her chair, as if physically recoiling from the offer in my hands. She looked at Jenna, her eyes wide with theatrical disbelief. "Can you believe this?" she said, her voice pitched for an audience. It wasn't to me. It was commentary. Mark. Oh, Mark. So delusional. The word hit me like a physical slap. Delusional. Priya shifted uncomfortably, looking down at her plate. Jenna, however, leaned in, the vulture sensing carrion. Qley turned her gaze back to me, but it wasn't the look you give a partner. It was the look you give a slightly slow waiter who's brought the wrong wine. "Imagine thinking," she said slowly, enunciating each word for maximum impact, "that I'd actually marry him." She said him like it was a synonym for garbage. "Qley," I tried, but she cut me off with a wave of her hand. "No, listen. It's sweet. It is. The whole stable engineer thing. The reliable Sunday meal prep. The security is cute, babe. Really." She tilted her head. "But marriage? To you? My life would be so settled. I'd be bored by 30. I'm meant for sparkle. For experiences. Not for this." She gestured vaguely at me, still kneeling, the ring box now feeling like a radioactive artifact in my palm. The humiliation was a living thing, slithering up my neck, burning my ears. I saw the pity in Priya's eyes and the naked glee in Jenna's. I saw the other diners pretending not to stare. But more than anything, I saw Qley. Not the woman I loved, but a stranger, performing cruelty for social credit. The cold floor beneath my knee seemed to seep into my veins. The shattering of my heart wasn't a dramatic break. It was a quiet, internal explosion, the fragments instantly freezing into something sharp and clear. All the fog of love and hope evaporated in the heat of her mockery, leaving a landscape of brutal, undeniable truth. I moved slowly, deliberately. The frantic drumbeat was gone, replaced by a profound, ringing silence. I closed the ring box. The click of the hinge was the loudest sound in the world. I stood up, my joints feeling old. I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my wallet. I calculated my share of the appetizers and drinks, added a generous tip for the impending scene, and laid the cash on the table next to her untouched bread plate. "You're absolutely right," I said, my voice calm, flat, devoid of all emotion. It didn't even sound like mine. My mistake. I didn't look at Jenna or Priya. I didn't look at the other tables. I certainly didn't look at Qley, whose performative smirk was finally faltering into confusion. I turned and walked toward the exit. I didn't storm out. I didn't run. I walked with the steady, purposeful gait of a man who had just been shown a map out of a prison he never knew he was in. I heard a strangled mark behind me, but it wasn't a call of love or regret. It was the sound of a performer whose favorite prop had just walked off stage. I pushed through the heavy restaurant door and out into the cool night air. The silence was gone, replaced by a single, clear directive that echoed in the new, empty space where my heart used to be. Go home. Erase yourself. The drive home was conducted in absolute silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't scream or cry. I simply navigated the familiar streets, my mind operating with a terrifying, crystalline clarity. The emotional pain was there, a vast, dark ocean waiting to swallow me. But for now, I was standing on a single, steady command: move. Her apartment was in a modern complex she'd chosen for its aesthetic. I paid 70% of the rent. I'd hung the art, assembled the furniture, unclogged the shower drain. It had felt like building a home. Now, it was just a location containing my possessions. I changed out of my proposal slacks and buttoned down into a worn pair of jeans and a t-shirt. Work clothes. This was a job. I started in the living room. My books, meticulously organized on the shelves we'd built together. I didn't look at the titles. I just boxed them. My records, the vintage turntable I'd saved for, into a separate, padded box. I was a surgeon, and these were my instruments. I felt nothing. I moved to the bedroom. I took my clothes, my shoes, my winter gear from the back of the closet. I left the ridiculous cashmere sweater she'd bought me for my birthday last year, the one I never wore because it itched. I left everything that held the scent of US. From my nightstand, I took my grandfather's watch, my passport, the file folder with my car title and insurance. I left the framed photo of us at the beach, my smiling face now looking like a fool's. The only hesitation came in my office nook, really just a corner of the second bedroom. There, in a locked firebox, was the tangible proof of my delusion. The saved receipts for the ring, the brochures for the lakefront cottage I'd been quietly looking at for a future summer, the list of potential honeymoon destinations I'd started on my phone and printed out. I didn't open the box. I placed the entire thing into a crate. I would burn it later. The physical work was grounding, tape ripping, boxes sealing, the dull thud of stacked containers. I was a ghost meticulously erasing its own trace. I took my high-quality kitchen knives, the ones I used to cook the meals she'd Instagram. I left the garish, non-stick pans she'd bought because they were cute. I took my toolbox. I left the furniture. It was all tainted, a stage set for a play that was now, definitively, over. 3 hours. That's how long it took to reduce my life in that space to a neat stack of boxes and 2 suitcases by the front door. The apartment looked bizarre, lopsided, emptier but not empty, like a museum after a hasty heist. I took one final sweep. Bathroom, my razor, my toothbrush, the expensive cologne she said she loved. Left the matching towels. Then I sat on a bar stool at the kitchen island, the one where I'd eaten so many solitary breakfasts while she slept in. I pulled out my phone. Her contact photo, laughing, head thrown back, glared at me. I didn't block her. Not yet. I typed a single sentence. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was a simple, factual echo. The final nail in a coffin she had built. Imagine thinking I'd stay. I hit send. I watched the message deliver. Then, and only then, I went to my settings. I blocked her number. I opened each social media app. Block. 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 It wasn't an act of rage. It was a cybersecurity protocol. A severing of a compromised line. I hired a rideshare van with a driver who asked no questions. We loaded my life into the back in 10 silent minutes. As I pulled away in my own car, the van following, I didn't look back at the building. I was already gone. My best friend, David, answered his door at 11:30 p.m. holding a sleeping baby monitor. He took one look at my face, the headlights of the idling van behind me, and the stack of boxes, and simply stood aside. Guest room's clear. Put the baby down an hour ago, so tread light. No questions. That's what real friendship is. The dam broke around 2 a.m. in the dark, unfamiliar quiet of David's spare room. The ocean of pain finally surged over the wall of adrenaline and clarity. It was a silent, violent storm, shaking hands, a heaving chest, the hot, shameful tears of a publicly discarded man soaking into a borrowed pillow. I let it happen. I didn't fight it. I owed myself that one night of sheer, unadulterated devastation. When David's wife, Sarah, brought me coffee the next morning, her eyes were soft with pity. "She's an idiot, Mark," she said simply, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "A cruel, shallow idiot." I nodded, the hollow feeling returning. The grief was still there, but the clarity was back, colder now. "I know. I just didn't see it." "You saw what you wanted to see," David grunted, entering the kitchen. "She showed you who she was last night. In HD, believe her." I did. Over the next week, I operated. I called my landlord, explained the situation in blunt, unemotional terms. I paid a hefty fee to break my lease, wired my half of the penalty, and emailed the confirmation to the landlord with instructions to provide it to the remaining tenant. My legal obligations were severed. I didn't check her social media. I muted or unfollowed anyone who was primarily her friend. But the world is small, and information has a way of filtering through the cracks. A neutral mutual friend, Ben, texted 3 days in. "Ben, hey man, heard some wild stuff. You okay?" "Me, I'm fine. Appreciate you checking in." "Ben, she's telling people you had a psychotic break and abandoned her. But my cousin's girlfriend was at the Celadon that night. 2 tables over. The story she told is different." "Me, I'm sure it is." "Ben, just wanted you to know the narrative isn't sticking. People are talking. About her." I didn't reply. I didn't need the narrative to stick. I just needed it to not touch me. A few days later, while mindlessly scrolling through David's Instagram feed, I deleted my own apps. I saw a post from a guy I vaguely knew. A group shot at a rooftop bar. And there, front and center, was Qley, clinging to the arm of a guy named Leo. Leo, who worked in brand partnerships and was known at the gym for his neon sneakers and his habit of talking about his side hustles. In the photo, Qley's smile was too wide, her eyes glittering with a frantic energy. The caption read, "Vibes are immaculate with the crew. Sparkle's #living life. The karma vehicle had arrived." Shiny, hollow, and right on schedule. It was on day 7, as I was finalizing the lease on a clean, small, one-bedroom apartment of my own, that I made a tactical error. I had to unblock her number for 5 minutes to authorize the final transfer of a utilities deposit out of our old shared account. The block had been lifted for maybe 90 seconds when my phone buzzed. Not a text, a voicemail notification. My thumb hovered over it. This was the first breadcrumb, the first tug on the line. I pressed play and put it on speaker, leaning back in the stiff chair of the rental agency. Her voice filled the sterile little office. It was shaky, thin, layered with a confusion that bordered on anger. There were no tears. Not yet. "Mark. Hey, it's Qley. This is insane. You need to come get the rest of your stuff. I'm not your storage unit. You can't just leave. We need to talk about the lease. The landlord is being weird. Call me back. This is so immature." Click. The tone was magnificent. No apology. No recognition of her role. Just bewildered entitlement. "How dare you follow through on the consequences of my actions? How dare you not be here to manage the fallout?" A slow, cold smile touched my lips for the first time in a week. It held no warmth. It was the smile of a chess player who sees his opponent's doomed opening move. I deleted the voicemail. I reblocked the number. I signed the lease for my new apartment. The silence on my end was no longer just an absence of sound. It was a weapon, and she was just beginning to feel its edge. The silence was my sanctuary. In my new apartment, a compact, sunlit box with blank walls and the scent of fresh paint, I began the quiet work of rebuilding a man. Not for revenge, not to show her, but because the person I was had been dismantled in a restaurant, and I had to assemble something new from the pieces. I went to the gym at 6 a.m., not to get ripped, but for the simple, brutal logic of it. Lift a weight. Put it down. Repeat. Progress was measurable. I found a therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Vance, and in her calm office, I didn't just talk about Qley. I talked about why I thought a standing ovation was the same as love, why I'd confused being useful with being valued. Work became a refuge. I buried myself in structural analyses and project timelines, things that obeyed laws of physics and mathematics, not the chaotic whims of a performance artist. I reconnected with friends from before Qley, the guys she'd dismissed as boring. We went to dive bars and talked about football and woodworking, and no one analyzed anyone's tone for hidden meaning. I bought a single, comfortable armchair and placed it by the window. On Saturday mornings, I would sit there with a coffee, listening to the city wake up, and feel a sensation so foreign it took me weeks to identify it. Peace. The war, however, was being waged on the other side of the silence. Attempt 1. The logical assault. Text from unknown number. Unknown number. Mark, it's Qley. We need to be adults about this. The landlord is threatening legal action for breaking the lease. You're legally obligated for half the fee. I have the paperwork. Let's meet and sort this out like rational people. This avoidance is childish. I stared at the message. The audacity was almost impressive. The legal action was the fee I'd already paid and emailed her proof of. She was either lying or she hadn't even checked her email, too wrapped in her drama. I didn't engage. I opened my banking app, found the transaction for the lease break fee, screenshotted it, and forwarded it to the same number with the caption, asterisk settled. April 12th. See attached. Asterisk then I blocked the number. Attempt 2. The emotional probe, a call, late at night, a new number. I answered on the third ring, saying nothing. Mark. Her voice was thick, watery. The performance had shifted genres, from comedy to tragedy. It's me. I remained silent. I got your screenshot. I didn't see the email. Everything's been so. A shaky breath. Leo, the guy I've been seeing, he's nothing like you. He borrowed $500 for a can't-miss opportunity and just ghosted. My friends are being weird. Jenna said I might have overreacted. At the restaurant, I could hear the careful construction of the sentence, the testing of the waters. She was offering me a piece of wrong to see if I'd bite. She filled the silence I left. I miss our routine. Coming home, and you'd have dinner started. Knowing the bills were handled. It was stable. The word she'd once spat as an insult was now offered as a longing tribute. Can we just talk? Coffee. No expectations. I think I made a terrible mistake. The plea hung in the air. The old me would have crumbled. The old me heard a damsel in distress. The new me heard a consumer who'd returned a product, found the replacement faulty, and wanted to see if the warranty was still valid. I've moved my things and settled the lease, I said, my voice calm, a flat lake. There's nothing to discuss. Mark, please. I ended the call. Blocked the number. I felt nothing but a mild distaste, like I'd brushed against something sticky. The karma wasn't a thunderclap. It was a slow, public unraveling. I heard it through Ben, who heard it from his cousin's girlfriend, who saw it all on social media. Leo, the vibes guy, hadn't just ghosted Qley. He'd been dating 3 women concurrently, all of whom discovered each other through a series of incriminating Instagram stories. A dramatic, public confrontation ensued in the comments of one of his posts, with Qley's furious, misspelled replies screenshot and shared across their social circle. The immaculate vibes were now a toxic spill. Her performative cruelty at my expense was now being re-examined through the lens of her own very public humiliation. The narrative had fully turned. This, it seemed, was the breaking point. Attempt 3. The angry truth, doorstep desperation. I was making pasta, a simple aglio e olio, when the buzzer for my building's front door went off. I wasn't expecting anyone. I pressed the intercom. Hello. Mark. It's me. Let me in. Her voice was ragged, stripped of all pretense. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. I didn't answer. I released the intercom button. A minute later, my personal cell rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The buzzer went off again, one long, incessant drone. With a sigh, I went downstairs. Not to let her in, but to end this. I opened the interior door to the foyer. She stood on the other side of the security glass, a ghost of the woman from the restaurant. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. She wore yoga pants and a stained sweatshirt. She looked small, brittle. Seeing me, she pressed her hands against the glass. "Open the door, Mark. We need to talk. Now." I didn't open it. I stood just inside, my arms crossed. "Say what you need to say." "Let me in," she hissed, her voice cracking. "You have to let me in. Look what you did. You left, and you broke everything." I remained silent, watching her. "You left me with the full rent. With the bills. Leo cleaned out my Venmo. My friends won't return my calls. Jenna said I create drama." Her words tumbled out, an avalanche of consequences with me squarely blamed as the cause. "This is your fault. If you hadn't done that spectacle at the restaurant, none of this would have happened." I finally spoke, my voice low and even. "I proposed. You said no. That's all that happened." "You embarrassed me," she shouted, her fists now little balls against the glass. "You put me on the spot. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to say no," I said, the simplicity of it hanging in the air. "You weren't supposed to perform a monologue." She stared at me, her chest heaving. The victim act was slipping, eroded by my infuriating calm. The true bedrock of her character was emerging. "You were never enough anyway," she spat, the mask finally gone, revealing the snarling face beneath. "You were a placeholder. A comfortable couch I was waiting to replace. I was doing you a favor by being with you. You're a boring, predictable little man and you'll die alone, you cold bastard." There it was. The unvarnished truth, ugly and final. I didn't flinch. I felt a strange sense of gratitude. She had just confirmed, in explicit detail, that every ounce of pain had been worth it for this moment of clarity. I gave a single, slow nod. "Okay." Then I turned and walked back toward the stairs. "Mark," she shrieked, the sound muffled by the glass. "Mark, come back." I didn't look back. I climbed the stairs to my quiet apartment, to the smell of garlic and golden oil, to my single chair by the window. I plated my pasta, sat down, and ate my meal in perfect, undisturbed peace. The buzzer blared once more, a short, furious burst, and then fell silent forever.